This video is about functionalism, the philosophy of mind which is like a revolutionary in our life. Functionalism in the reasoning of intellect is a hypothesis that recommends each mental state, like convictions, wants, or torments, is characterized by its function, specifically, its causal connections with other mental states, tactile inputs, and behavioral yields. This implies that what makes something a mental state isn't what it's made of physically, but how it capacities or works inside a system. Functionalism developed as a reaction to two prior hypotheses, the personality hypothesis of intellect and behaviorism. The character hypothesis of intellect claims. Criticism. China brain. Ned Block's China brain thought challenges the functionalist idea of different realizability, which holds that mental states depend as it were on utilitarian parts, not on physical usage. In this situation, if the whole populace of China were organized to work like a brain, functionalism would propose this framework might have mental states. Peace contends this is crazy, demonstrating a blemish in functionalism. Some functionalists fight that such a framework might without a doubt have mental states, qualia, but we cannot get at what this encounter would be like. This recommends either that qualia are all-inclusive over all utilitarian frameworks or that they are illusory. Functionalism, with its different forms, machine state, psycho-functionalism, explanatory functionalism, homuncular functionalism, and robotic functionalism, offers a wide system for understanding mental states in terms of their capacities. Each variation addresses diverse challenges and joins diverse levels of complexity, endeavoring to accommodate the functionalist viewpoint with experimental discoveries and philosophical critiques. The Chinese room. Inverted spectrum. Ned Block's altered range contention evaluates functionalism by investigating the plausibility of modified qualia. The thought explorer envisions an individual, Jane, who sees the color range in invert, e.g., what others see as violet, she sees as yellow. In show disdain toward of these contrasts in subjective involvement, Jane's utilitarian reactions to colors, e.g., calling an orange, orange, and ceasing at ruddy activity lights are indistinguishable to those of an individual with commonplace color vision. This recommends that functionalism cannot account for the subjective or phenomenological perspectives of mental states, as two practically indistinguishable people might have distinctive encounters of the same stimuli. David Chalmers addresses this by proposing that there is a nomological, law-like relationship between mental states and utilitarian states. He proposes that a silicon-based robot with a utilitarian profile coordinating that of a human would have to be completely cognizant. Chalmers' contention depends on the thought that supplanting a human brain with practically proportionate circuitry ought to not modify the person's qualia without the individual taking note. If qualia were to alter, the individual would likely take note, driving to changes in their utilitarian profile. However, faultfinders like Brian G. Crabb contend that Chalmers' contentions do not address cases of forever modified or truant qualia. If somebody were born with altered qualia or if a robot needed qualia inside and out, there would be no changes for them to take note or alter to, undermining Chalmers' position that useful states fundamentally connect with cognizant experience. Both the Chinese room and the altered range contentions highlight noteworthy challenges to functionalism. Searle's Chinese room emphasizes the contrast between syntactic handling and honest to goodness understanding, proposing that functionalist models miss the quintessence of semantic comprehension. The altered range contention focuses out that utilitarian comparability does not essentially involve indistinguishable subjective encounters, addressing functionalism's capacity to account for the lavishness of cognizant involvement. In show disdain toward of reactions from functionalists, these studies uncover critical confinements and proceed to incite wrangle about in the logic of mind. The twin soil thought presented by Hilary Putnam, serves as an unmistakable contention against functionalism, in show disdain toward of the reality that it was initially pointed at challenging semantic internalism. The explorer envisions a twin soil that is indistinguishable to soil in each perspective but that the substance called water on twin soil has a distinctive chemical composition, XYZ, or maybe than H2O. In show disdain toward of this distinction, XYZ shows all the same discernible properties as H2O, such as being a clear, drinkable fluid found in lakes and rivers. On both soil and twin soil, occupants, counting you and your twin soil doppelganger, have indistinguishable encounters and behaviors. Agreeing to functionalism, which characterizes mental states by their useful roles, inputs, yields, and relations among other mental states, this suggests that you and your twin are practically indistinguishable. Hence, you both accept that water is damp. Be that as it may, Putnam contends that your conviction alludes to H2O whereas your twin's conviction alludes to XYZ, showing a contrast in the substance of your mental states. This inconsistency recommends that functionalism cannot completely account for the nature of mental states, as it neglects the outside components contributing to their content. Defenders of functionalism at first reacted by recognizing between inside and outside substance, recommending that the inner perspectives of mental states are practically decided whereas the outside substance relates to the outside world. Be that as it may, this refinement has demonstrated troublesome to legitimize clearly, driving numerous to embrace externalist causal speculations of mental substance, like Jerry Fedor's Hilter-Kilter causal hypothesis, which broadens the scope of functionalism to incorporate outside objects causing mental representations. A key suspicion in the twin soil contention is that encountering XYZ would lead to a distinctive mental state than encountering H2O. Faultfinders contend that since no one seam tell the contrast between H2O and XYZ, this presumption negates functionalism, which keeps up that indistinguishable utilitarian connections would result in indistinguishable mental states. Additionally, functionalism faces feedback from semantic comprehensive quality, as highlighted by the damn, darn issue postured by Peace and Fodor. This issue focuses out that distinctive verbal responses to the same torment, e.g., saying, damn, versus, darn, suggest that functionalism would require endlessly distinctive inner mental states for each response. This is outlandish, as it appears clear that the basic torment is the same notwithstanding of the particular verbal reaction. A potential arrangement is a direct frame of comprehensive quality, but this approach battles to separate pertinent from insignificant substance without depending on an analytic synthetic qualification, which numerous scholars point to avoid. Triviality arguments. Functionalism, an unmistakable hypothesis in the logic of intellect, sets that mental states are characterized by their utilitarian roles, how they connected with other states, inputs, and outputs, rather than by their physical substrates. Be that as it may, this approach has confronted noteworthy feedback, especially through technicality contentions, which recommend that functionalism either gets to be as well comprehensive or collapses into other theories. Over-liberalism in attributing mental properties. Ned Peace contends that in its endeavor to maintain a strategic distance from the limit scope of type physicalism, functionalism gets to be too much magnanimous, crediting mental properties to substances that instinctively need them. For occurrence, Peace proposes a theoretical situation where the financial states, inputs, and yields of the Bolivian economy seem be organized to reflect the mental states of an individual. Beneath functionalism, this odd isomorphism would erroneously credit awareness or mental properties to the economy of Bolivia, outlining an overextension of the theory. Triviality and panpsychism. Hilary Putnam, John Searle, and others have expanded this study, contending that functionalism's inside structures are so broadly characterized that they seem be found essentially all over, driving to detail. This technicality suggests that functionalism seem diminished to behaviorism or a frame of panpsychism. These contentions rest on the presumption that physical frameworks advance through interesting states and that a functionalist mapping from mental states to these physical states will continuously exist. Thus, any system, no matter how mundane, could be considered an intellect if a reasonable mapping is formulated, driving to an excessively comprehensive and minor conception of mental states. Functionalism and the part of outside objects. Formulations of functionalism that consolidate strict prerequisites for intelligent with outside objects point to dodge technicality. In any case, by emphasizing input-output behavior, these definitions hazard lessening functionalism to behaviorism. Behaviorism centers on perceptible behaviors as the sole pointers of mental states, in this way narrowing the scope and possibly losing the abundance of inner mental life that functionalism looks for to capture. Peter Godfrey Smith's transducer layer argument. Peter Godfrey Smith offers an extra evaluate, recommending that indeed with strict functionalist definitions, detail can develop if we acknowledge a apparently harmless presumption, including a transducer layer, an input-output framework to in question ought to not alter whether that protest has mental states. The transducer layer can deliver behavior based on a basic mapping from inputs to the system's activities and from the system states to yields. Since physical frameworks are continuously in interesting states at each minute an input, a comparing mapping will continuously exist, in this manner making the expansion of a transducer layer a minor errand. This recommends that any framework might be made to display any wanted physical behavior, encourage trivializing the concept of mental states beneath functionalism. Addressing technicality through causality. Godfrey Smith proposes that tending to these issues may require joining an idea of causality into the functionalist system. This may include recognizing a continuum between objects that are minds and those that are not, or maybe then in supreme qualification. Be that as it may, this approach raises assist complexities. It appears to require either a center on outside behavior, associated to behaviorism, or a nitty-gritty examination of the inside structure of the framework, reminiscent of character hypothesis. Whereas different realizability, the thought that mental states can be realized in different physical substrates, remains intaglio, the claim that high-level utilitarian portrayals are independent gets to be flawed. In this way, functionalism must hook with adjusting inclusivity and specificity to dodge detail without losing its foundational principles. In outline, the technicality contentions highlight critical challenges for functionalism. These studies constrain the hypothesis to stand up to the chance of getting to be excessively comprehensive or collapsing into other speculations, inciting continuous talks about almost how best to portray and guard the functionalist account of the mind. Thank you for watching our video.